My respect to Mahasangha and my respect to Venerable Bhante Sivali. My greetings to my brothers and sisters. I am speaking on the historical journey of the Bhikkhuni in India and beyond. This is for Mahabodhi Society of India conference. I would like to begin soon after the enlightenment of the Buddha. The Buddha encountered Mara. And in this conversation, the Buddha expressed his commitment to establish the Bhikkhuni Sangha. No, not only the Bhikkhuni Sangha, the fourfold Buddhist communities. That is, the Bhikkhus, Bhikkhunis, Upasaka, and Upasika. This reference, interestingly, it does not appear in the early part of his mission. The actual happening is in the early part of his mission, but the way that the Tripitaka was recorded, you could not find it in any other sutra, but it appears in Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which is at the end. But Mahaparinirvana Sutra is the longest, so please look in Digha Nikaya in the sutra. So therefore, the idea of having both the Bhikkhu Sangha and the Bhikkhuni Sangha was there from the very beginning of the Buddha's mission. I would say the very first year after his enlightenment. Immediately after his enlightenment, the Buddha almost was able to form the Bhikkhu Sangha almost immediately. You remember that after his enlightenment, as he approached the 5 Panchavakkhya, the first one who was enlightened was Gontanya. And when Gontanya actually see, the Buddha exclaimed, Anyasi Gontanya. Gontanya has seen now with his own eyes. So, that's the first Bhikkhu who became enlightened. And the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one happened one after another. So within the first week, we already got the Bhikkhu Sangha. And then the Buddha visited his father, King Suttotana, second time. At that time, his father was already very ill. The Buddha went there to visit his father, his ailing father, and to raise him physically and spiritually. While giving him treatment, the Buddha also gave Dharma talk. Eventually, the king was enlightened. Was his wife, the Queen Mahapajapati. She also listened to the Dharma talk that the Buddha was giving to the King Suttotana. When King Suttotana became enlightened, she became Sotapanna. She already entered the stream of enlightenment. So after the royal cremation, the Buddha was preparing to leave for Vesali. He was preparing to leave with his Bhikkhu Sangha. At this time, the queen approached. She had now done her duty as the queen, as the wife, and now she is free. So she approached the Buddha and requested him that she would like also to join his Sangha. The Buddha refused, not only once but 3 times. But in the text, at least in the Pali text, there was no reason given why he did not allow her to join the Sangha. He simply said, Gautami, please do not entertain the idea of going to homeless life. And then the Buddha left for Vesali with the retinue of the Bhikkhu Sangha. We try to understand, why the Buddha, what was the reason behind the Buddha's mind. Possibly he did not want the queen to be exposed to hardship. To lead a monastic life, maybe the queen did not realize that actually it was very hard. Apart from begging, literally begging from one house to another, she had to walk bare feet. Imagine the life of comfort in the palace, and now she wanted to go in a monastic lifestyle. It's very hard. So the Buddha simply said, please do not ask so. Please don't entertain that kind of idea. So it is purely out of compassion from the Buddha. However, after the Buddha left for Vesali, Queen Mahapajapati shaved her head and put on saffron robes just like the Buddha, and not she herself, but also with a large group of the Sakyani, the women from the Sakya clan. Later in the commentaries, they gave this figure of 500. Every time when you see 500, it means large number. And she walked together with all these ladies from the palace. She walked on foot from Kapilavastu. Now you have to cross the border. Now you have Nepal and you have India on the other side. From Kapilavastu to Vesali. That distance is 372 kilometers on foot. So that is the first historical journey of the Bhikkhunis. By the time she arrived in Vesali, where the Buddha was staying, she did not enter. She did not enter because she was afraid that already the Buddha refused her to join the order, and now she arrived. So she was waiting outside, and it was Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda approached her and asked what was her wish, and she explained to Venerable Ananda. Venerable Ananda was mediating. He went outside to talk to the queen, and then he returned to the Buddha inside this Guttakara, the place where the Buddha was staying. And then again, Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha, and the Buddha still insisted that he did not allow her because he did not think that she should not entertain this idea of leading homeless life. And finally, Venerable Ananda asked Pariyayena, the Pali word is Pariyayena, asked the other way, is it because the women cannot be enlightened? The Buddha said, no, Ananda, women can be enlightened. They can experience the 4 stages of enlightenment. And because of that, the Buddha eventually allowed the women to join the order. Of course, at this time, Garudama, the 8th Garudama was introduced. Just to make the story short, this is first time that women can join the order of the Buddha. The Bhikkhunis started. The Bhikkhunis started when the Bhikkhu Sangha was already established for 5 years. So the Buddha spent altogether 45 years from the time he was enlightened until the time of Mahaparinirvana. But during these 45 years, the 40 years, he already had both Bhikkhu Sangha and Bhikkhuni Sangha. The Bhikkhunis spread to many different locations in that time. From the text, we could discover that, of course, Venerable Mahapajapati would have returned to Kapilavastu because we found verses which she was talking to the Buddha in Kapilavastu. In Rajgir, you also find the Bhikkhunis there. In Sravasti, you also find the Bhikkhunis there. And in Vesali, of course, the place where the Bhikkhuni started. So at least we have these major cities, where we can find, where we can locate the Bhikkhunis. And now I jump to Ashoka's time. Ashoka's time is the 3rd century BC. Very interesting. Before he became king, while he was a crown prince, he was based in Ujjaini. And he had a wife. His wife's name was Devi or Videhi. And the place where they stay was in Videsa. Videsa is a place near Sanji. Now you will click why we have many Bhikkhuni Aramas discovered archaeologically to confirm that in this area, in this Sanji area, there were many Bhikkhuni Aramas. Then I skip to the second journey. The second journey of the Bhikkhunis, during this time, King Ashoka was sending out Dhammadutta, like ambassador, Buddhist ambassador to different region, to 9 different routes. And one particular one to the south of India, he sent his own son, that is Venerable Mahinda. Venerable Mahinda went from Sanji to Sri Lanka. You will not be surprised then why the stupa in Anuradhapura and in Sri Lanka look very much like the stupa in Sanji. you see this connection way back in the 3rd century BC. And now Venerable Mahinda was very successful in teaching the non-Buddhists, the Sri Lankan were, at that time they were still non-Buddhists. He converted them to Buddhism. And the second, I think it was in his second Dharma talk, the lady of the palace became enlightened. The Princess Anula was the very first Sri Lankan person who was entered Sotapanna. She became Sotapanna, and because of this she asked if she could be ordained. She wanted to be ordained just like Venerable Mahinda. So Venerable Mahinda had to send for his sister. His sister was Princess Sankamita. So King Ashoka sent his daughter Venerable Sankamita to Sri Lanka. This is a second journey of the Bhikkhunis from India to Sri Lanka, and Venerable Sankamita actually is the first international Dhammaduta, first international ambassador, Buddhist ambassador, taking Buddhist lineage from India to Sri Lanka. It's very moving when the King Ashoka himself, traveled with her on land until she boarded the ship. And he was watching there until the ship departed so that he could not see the ship anymore. Very moving incident, because once you travel that kind of long distance, very seldom that you would return. So both Venerable Mahinda and Venerable Sankamita stayed in Sri Lanka until they passed away. At the year when he left he was 32 years old, and then he passed away at the age of 80. So both brothers and sisters stayed in Sri Lanka to establish Buddhism in Sri Lanka, which was then not yet a Buddhist, but they converted them to Buddhist, and that's how Buddhism started in the land in Sri Lanka, became very important. The next connection that I would like to talk about is a Chinese pilgrim, a Fa Hien, a Chinese monk, Fa Hien. He was born during 337 AD, and he died 422 AD. During this time, Fa Hien traveled from China to India on foot, across China to India like that. But on his return, he went by sea, and he came to Sri Lanka. Very important information, because it was in Sri Lanka that he saw many Bhikkhunis. And upon his return, he informed the Chinese women who were actually waiting for ordination. He informed them that he saw many Bhikkhunis in Sri Lanka. So that was very important information for those Chinese women. And eventually they invited the Sri Lankan Bhikkhunis to travel to China and to establish the Bhikkhuni lineage. This happened in the year 433 AD. That was when Venerable Devasara and her group, traveled from Sri Lanka by sea. The ship that took them from Sri Lanka to India, the ship was a Nandi, or maybe the name of the owner of the ship is Nandi. And that was how they established the Bhikkhuni Sangha. They gave ordination to 300 Chinese women. The place was Southern Forest Monastery in Nanking. So this is recorded as a history. I consider this second international Buddhist ambassador by Bhikkhuni. The Bhikkhuni lineage established in China up till today, continue up till today. I mentioned yet another interesting incident, that is Venerable I Ching. Venerable I Ching was born, the year he was born was 635 AD, and he died 713 AD. He was very moved, inspired. He was inspired by Venerable Fa Hien. So again he made a travel. He traveled from from China to India, and he stopped in Indonesia. Again, when Wat I Ching mentioned about Sumatra, he spent so many years, something like 25 years in his traveling. And by the time he returned to China, it was the time of the queen. You remember that emperor, the female emperor, Wu Zetian. Wu Zetian was the king, female king of China at that time. So she really celebrated upon his return. The important message that I would like to share with you here was in Indonesia. Whenever I Ching mentioned about the Bhikkhunis, and when you see Borobudur, when you go and see Borobudur, on the second level, on the outer panel, you will see Bhikkhuni carved on the stone. That was the story of Sudanta. Sudanta was searching for his spiritual journey. Sudanta went to at least 77 teachers, and among these 77 teachers, one of them was a Bhikkhuni, clearly on Borobudur. So the existence of Bhikkhuni, I refer to, possibly maybe in Indonesia they had Bhikkhuni, or maybe it is only from this narrative of Sudanta and his journey, his spiritual journey, searching, looking for teachers, and one of his teachers was a Bhikkhuni. So this is the interesting mission that the Bhikkhunis in the past made. Last but not the least, I would like to mention about Siam Vangsa. Siam Vangsa, the Sri Lankan try to continue the lineage of the Bhikkhus and Bhikkhunis. And in the year 1752, the Sri Lankan king sent envoy, to Thailand and asked for the lineage of the Bhikkhus. And the Thai king sent Venerable Upali along with 25 Bhikkhus to start the Bhikkhu lineage in Sri Lanka. But because Thailand never had Bhikkhunis, so they could not revive the Bhikkhuni lineage as well. However, whenever Upali was successful to revive the lineage of the Bhikkhus in Sri Lanka, that's why you have Siam Vangsa. Siam Vangsa started from 1753 and continued up till present. Luckily, this transmission of the lineage happened in the year 1753. 14 years after that, the Burmese sacked our capital, and we really lost the lineage in Ayutthaya itself. So luckily, the Siam Vangsa lineage was established in Sri Lanka before that time. So this is yet another connection, but without the Bhikkhuni, because there were no Bhikkhuni in Thailand. You see the Buddhist journey, the historical journey of both the Bhikkhus and the Bhikkhunis from India to beyond. Very colorful, very interesting. I am just giving you only gist of what I discovered, and there are yet many details to be filled in later on. However, thank you so much for giving me the time to share with you what I have discovered, and I hope that in the future we will have more time to go into details of our discussion today. Thank you.